On a quiet Sunday morning in the quaint market town of Ashford, the kind of day where the scent of freshly brewed coffee lingers in the air, and the only sounds are the gentle clinking of dishes in the kitchen, Emma sat halfway through her breakfast. The sunlight streamed softly through the lace curtains, casting delicate patterns on the worn oak table. She was savoring the calm, the kind that made her feel settled, until footsteps echoed softly down the hallway. Ryan, her stepson, appeared in the doorway, stretching and yawning as though he had just rolled out of bed. At 22, Ryan had the easy charm of someone who knew he was good-looking, with tousled chestnut hair that stubbornly refused to stay neat and deep green eyes that often seemed to be measuring the world, or perhaps her. He was tall and lean, dressed casually in faded jeans and a loose gray sweatshirt, his worn trainers barely making a sound on the wooden floor. "Morning, Emma," he said, his voice still thick with sleep. "Good morning," she replied, forcing a smile as she wiped a crumb from her lip. Nothing unusual so far. Just another routine exchange. But then, something in the way Ryan looked at her held her gaze a moment too long. Emma had been married to his father, Mark, for 5 years now. During that time, Ryan had always been polite, even respectful, though his confidence sometimes bordered on cocky. There had been subtle jabs over the years, little comments about how she didn't quite look old enough to be his stepmother, or compliments about her clothes that carried a strange undertone she couldn't quite place. She'd always brushed them off as harmless teasing, chalked it up to his personality, but this morning as she dished eggs onto her plate, Ryan leaned against the countertop, his tone dropping to something more serious. You don't really look like someone who's been married for 5 years. There was no teasing in his voice. It was low, deliberate, almost suggestive. Emma's stomach twisted, but she forced herself to laugh lightly, steering the conversation towards safer ground. Ryan didn't press, but the look in his eyes left a lingering heat she couldn't shake. After breakfast, Emma busied herself with household chores, trying to dismiss the encounter as just one of those odd moments. Yet Ryan's presence seemed to shadow her throughout the day. He found excuses to be near her, asking about her plans for the week, offering to help fold the laundry while she cooked dinner. Each time, his attention felt charged with something just beneath the surface, an unspoken tension that made her skin prickle. That evening, with Mark still at work, the house settled into a different quiet. The living room was dimly lit by the flicker of the television, and Emma sat curled on the sofa in a soft cream cashmere sweater that slipped slightly off one shoulder, paired with dark leggings and ankle boots that added a subtle edge to her look. Her chestnut hair fell in loose waves, framing her face in a way that softened her sharp features but revealed just enough of her neckline to catch the light. Teasingly, Ryan shifted closer on the couch, the space between them shrinking imperceptibly. He said, a smirk playing at his lips, "Some women don't even try to stay awake after they get married. But you're different." His words were meant as a compliment, but they carried a weight that made her heart race. She told herself she was overthinking it, that she was imagining something that wasn't there. But when Ryan rose to leave and paused in the doorway, turning back with a steady gaze, he said softly, "You really are different." I know. Smile. No joke. Just that look, lingering too long before he slipped away down the hall. Emma sat frozen, her pulse pounding erratically, unsure whether it was discomfort, confusion, or something else entirely tightening in her chest. She tried to shove the moment to the back of her mind, but his words clung stubbornly, like a stubborn coffee stain on a white shirt she couldn't quite scrub out. The next morning, Ryan was unusually helpful. Without being asked, he offered to unload the dishwasher, his hands moving deftly as he avoided meeting her eyes head-on. When she thanked him, he merely smiled, holding her gaze a fraction longer than necessary. Over the following days, Ryan's behavior shifted. He seemed to find reasons to be where she was, popping into the kitchen for a glass of water he didn't need, settling on the sofa to chat while she folded laundry. Their conversations skimmed the surface, touching on work, friends, casual anecdotes. But beneath it all, there was an undercurrent, a subtle closeness in the way he leaned just a little too near when handing her a folded shirt, the fleeting brush of his hand against hers when no touch was needed. Emma told herself she was imagining things, being overly sensitive. But then his remarks grew bolder. One afternoon, as they discussed weekend plans, Ryan grinned and said, "If Dad spent half as much time paying attention to you as I do, you'd be a lot happier." Emma froze, unsure whether to laugh or confront him. His lack of embarrassment surprised her. In fact, he seemed almost amused by her silence. The truth was, a part of her noticed the attention. Mark had been distant lately. Late nights at the office, drained conversations, weekends swallowed by work rather than family. Ryan's focus was the stark contrast, and admitting she craved it made Emma feel ashamed. She told herself it was wrong, that she should keep her distance, but she never quite pushed him away. One evening, as she was tidying up, her phone buzzed. A message from Ryan blinked on the screen. * We need to talk. Alone. * Emma's chest tightened. She stared at the words, her fingers trembling. Ignoring it felt like relief and disappointment tangled together. When she finally replied with a cautious "about what?" his answer came swiftly, "You know what I mean." Her mind spun. The line between innocent and inappropriate had blurred days ago. And now it hovered dangerously close to vanishing altogether. She felt herself teetering on the edge of something she couldn't fully grasp, knowing whatever happened next would change everything. Later that afternoon, with Mark still away, the house seemed to hold its breath. Ryan didn't waste time on small talk. His eyes locked onto hers with an intensity that made her heart stutter. He confessed to months of bottled-up feelings. Not a fleeting crush, but something deeper. He said she was the only one who truly listened. The only person who saw him for who he really was. Emma's heartbeat thundered in her chest, part disbelief, part something she refused to name. Her first instinct was to tell him to stop, to shut it all down. But his words seeped in, stirring a flicker of curiosity she tried to suppress. He spoke of how Mark didn't appreciate her, how she deserved better, how he could give her the attention she was missing. The air between them thickened, every second stretching unbearably. Emma's resolve waned with each word, though she fought to remind herself this was wrong. Just as Ryan stepped closer, measured and deliberate, as though giving her time to refuse, the distant sound of a car pulling up shattered the moment her stomach clenched. Reality crashed back in. Ryan stepped back, expression unreadable, and Emma walked away without a word. The front door opening moments later was both a lifeline and a warning. Whatever had almost happened was now a secret hanging precariously in the balance. Mark entered, and Emma plastered a calm smile onto her face, exchanging mundane pleasantries as if nothing had shifted. Ryan acted casual, slipping seamlessly into easy conversation, erasing the tension like it had never existed, but Emma's answers were guarded, her mind a whirlwind of guilt and confusion. Every glance they exchanged was a question unasked, a truth left unspoken. Later that night, alone in her bedroom, Emma replayed the near disaster over and over. The car on the driveway, the shrinking distance between them, the moment she almost let go, the weight of what could have been pressed down on her. She knew she'd come dangerously close to crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. It wasn't just about Ryan. It was about her marriage, her integrity, the fragile trust she built with Mark. By morning, she knew she couldn't let the tension linger. She asked Ryan to meet her privately. He arrived with a half-expectant look, but Emma's words were firm. Whatever feelings he harbored could never be acted upon. The boundaries had been crossed once and could not be again. Going further would irreparably damage them all. Ryan's frustration was clear. His jaw clenched, ready to argue, but after a long silence his shoulders slumped in reluctant acceptance. He muttered an apology, though it lacked conviction. Emma pressed no further. She just wanted the conversation, and the dangerous closeness, to end. Later that day she focused on Mark, sharing no details but telling him they needed to talk. She admitted to feeling distant and urged them to reconnect. Mark listened, more attentive than she expected, and for the first time in a long while, they spent an evening alone, undistracted. In the days that followed, Ryan kept his distance. Yet occasionally she caught a flicker in his eyes, a reminder the tension hadn't vanished, only buried deeper. Emma was determined to keep it there. She'd stood too close to a line she never should have approached, and the lesson was seared into her. Temptation could be sharp, intoxicating, and utterly convincing in the moment. But it was the choices made in its shadow that defined a person. Yet, as she closed her eyes that night, a single question gnawed at her. How long could the delicate balance hold before everything unraveled? The following week dawned gray and drizzly, the kind of bleak English morning that seemed to seep into Emma's bones. Ashford was wrapped in a mist that blurred the edges of the familiar, turning even the narrow cobbled streets into something uncertain, like a stage set for secrets and whispered conversations. Emma pulled her trench coat tighter around her slender frame as she stepped outside, the collar brushing against her neck, and she paused briefly to adjust the scarf that framed her face in soft cream silk. It was a small comfort against the chill, but it did little to warm the knot of unease that had settled deep inside her. Ryan had kept his distance after their tense conversation, but the silence between them was far from peaceful. It was as if the air in their shared home had thickened, turning every glance, every word, into a cautious dance on a tightrope stretched taut above a canyon. Emma felt the weight of those unspoken moments pressing down on her, making her skin crawl. That morning Mark had left early for a meeting in London, leaving Emma with the house to herself. She supposed she should have been relieved, grateful for the space to breathe without the tangled emotions hovering in every corner. Instead, she found herself restless, pacing the modest sitting room that overlooked the garden, her fingers tracing the rim of a chipped mug filled with lukewarm tea. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ryan. "Can we talk?" She stared at it, heart pounding, not from desire this time but dread. What more could there be to say? She typed back cautiously, "Where?" "By the river. Now." Emma's breath hitched. The river store wasn't far. A quiet spot just beyond the town's edge, where the water wound lazily through thickets of willow and reeds. It was a place she'd often walked with Mark, sometimes with Ryan when he was younger, before things had grown complicated. The thought of meeting Ryan there, alone, sent a shiver down her spine. She debated for a moment, then slipped on her boots and grabbed her umbrella. If she was going to face this, better to do it somewhere open, where there were no walls to trap her. The path to the river was slick with mud and fallen leaves, the familiar crunch beneath her feet oddly comforting. The sky was a steel-gray dome, pressing low, and the first fat drops of rain began to fall, tapping gently on the umbrella's fabric. Ryan was already there, standing on the bank, hands shoved deep into the pockets of his dark jacket. His hair was damp and tousled, the green of his eyes sharper against the dull light. He turned as she approached, a faint, almost sad smile flickering across his lips. "Thanks for coming," he said quietly. Emma nodded, folding her umbrella as she tried to steady her voice. "What did you want to talk about?" Ryan hesitated, then took a tentative step closer, the rain mingling with the tension between them. "Look, I know what I said last week was out of line. I shouldn't have put you in that position." Emma glanced away, watching the river's slow current. "It's not just about what you said, Ryan. It's about what it means. What could happen if we don't stop this?" He sighed, running a hand through his wet hair. "Yeah, I get it. I don't want to ruin things for any of us." There was a pause, heavy with the weight of things left unsaid. Emma swallowed hard, feeling the fragile line between reason and temptation stretch thinner. "Why now?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Why bring this up again?" Ryan looked at her, eyes honest and vulnerable. "'Cause it's not going away. Not for me." Emma felt a pang of something she didn't want to name. Sympathy? Fear? Desire? It was all tangled inside her like the twisting roots along the riverbank. She took a deep breath. "We have to find a way to move past this. For your dad's sake. For mine." Ryan nodded, but the tension didn't lift. Instead, it seemed to coil tighter, a silent storm waiting to break. As they turned to leave, a sudden splash echoed downstream. Both froze. Emma's heart skipped. A figure emerged from the fog, a man in a dark coat, watching them with unreadable eyes. Ryan stiffened. "We're not alone." The stranger stepped forward, voice low and sharp. "I think it's time someone else knew what's been going on." Emma's breath caught. The quiet riverbank had become a stage for a new, darker act, one she hadn't seen coming. And whatever was about to be revealed threatened everything she thought she could control. The rain intensified, washing away the last of the afternoon's light, as the three of them stood beneath the heavy sky, caught in a moment that would change their lives forever. The stranger's voice cut through the damp air like a knife, sharp and unforgiving. Emma's heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat echoing her rising panic. The man was tall, his frame sturdy beneath a heavy navy coat, the collar turned up against the relentless drizzle. His eyes, a piercing shade of steel blue, flicked between Emma and Ryan with unsettling certainty, as if he carried a secret too heavy to bear alone. Ryan's jaw tightened. "Who are you?" His tone was steady but edged with warning. The stranger took a deliberate step forward, water sloshing around his polished leather boots. "Name's Paul. Paul Hendricks." His gaze locked on Emma. "You don't know me, but I know you. And I know what's been happening in this house." Emma's breath caught. The world tilted slightly, The familiar riverbank suddenly alien and threatening. What do you mean? She managed, voice trembling as the rain soaked through her coat. Paul's lips curled into a grim smile. Let's just say I have my sources. And I'm here to make sure someone finally pays attention. Ryan's eyes narrowed, a flicker of anger sparking. What are you talking about? You're scaring her. Emma glanced between them, confusion and fear swirling in her chest. Ryan, who is this man? Paul's gaze hardened. I'm the reason your perfect little family has been unraveling. And I'm not here to play nice. Emma's mind raced. The tension that had simmered beneath the surface, the dangerous closeness, the unspoken desires, the fragile trust, now faced a new, far more ominous threat. She instinctively stepped closer to Ryan, the uneasy alliance between them suddenly feeling like the only anchor in a storm. Paul's voice dropped to a near whisper, yet it carried the weight of a thunderclap. You think your secrets are safe? Think again. I've been watching, waiting. And now it's time to expose the truth. Emma's pulse thundered in her ears, a chill crawling down her spine. The rain intensified, blurring the edges of the world, as if nature itself conspired to cloak the unfolding drama. Ryan took a tentative step forward. What truth? What do you want? Paul's eyes gleamed with something unreadable, vengeance perhaps, or something darker. Let's just say the past has a way of catching up. And I'm here to remind you all that no secret stays buried forever. Emma swallowed hard, the weight of impending revelation pressing down on her. The fragile balance she'd fought to maintain was shattering, and there was no turning back. As the rain hammered down, washing the riverbank in a cold, relentless torrent, Emma realized that the quiet life she'd known was gone. In its place stood a storm of secrets, desires, and dangers, waiting to consume them all. And somewhere, deep in the shadows, a new chapter was beginning. The rain fell harder now, drumming on the umbrella Emma had abandoned moments ago. The cold seeped into her bones, but she barely noticed. Her eyes were fixed on Paul Hendricks, the stranger who had appeared like a loose thread threatening to unravel everything she had painstakingly held together. Ryan stood beside her, but the usual confident spark in his eyes was dimmed, replaced by a wary tension. Why now? He demanded, voice low but firm. What do you want with us? Paul's gaze flicked to Ryan, then back to Emma. Let's just say I'm here to settle some old scores. And I've got evidence, things that will make your head spin. He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in. Photos, messages, recordings. I know what's been going on between you two. Emma's stomach lurched. The cold rush of dread swept over her like a wave. Her mind screamed for answers, but her lips refused to form them. How had this man come to know? Who had he been watching, and for how long? Ryan's jaw clenched as he stepped protectively closer to Emma. You're bluffing. There's nothing to show. Paul's smile was thin and humorless. Oh, but there is. And if you think I'm just here to threaten, you're in for a surprise. He pulled a slim envelope from his coat pocket, water-dampened but intact, and held it up. This contains everything. And I'll make sure it gets to the right people unless you cooperate. Emma's mind raced. Exposure would shatter her marriage, ruin Mark's career, and drag Ryan into a scandal that would haunt him forever. Yet, even as fear clenched her heart, a flicker of defiance sparked. She wasn't about to let some shadow from the past destroy the fragile peace she was trying to rebuild. What do you want from us? She demanded, voice steadier than she felt. Paul's eyes gleamed with cold satisfaction. I want the truth. I want honesty. And I want you to pay for the lies. There was a long silence, broken only by the rain pounding around them. Emma exchanged a glance with Ryan, both caught in a moment suspended between dread and determination. I won't let you ruin us, Ryan said quietly, his usual bravado tempered by an unspoken plea. Paul nodded slowly. We'll see. Suddenly, the sharp sound of tires on wet gravel shattered the tense stillness. Emma's heart leapt. Headlights cut through the mist as a car pulled up nearby, its engine idling softly. A figure stepped out, a woman, early 30s, dressed impeccably in a tailored coat, her dark hair pulled back in a sleek ponytail. Her eyes flicked between the four of them with an unreadable expression. Paul, she said crisply, voice like ice. We need to move. Paul's jaw tightened. This isn't over, he said, slipping the envelope back into his coat. But for now, you have what you need. Emma watched as the two strangers disappeared into the mist, leaving her and Ryan alone by the riverbank. Drenched and shaken, the rain began to ease, But a storm had already taken root, one that would force Emma to confront not only the secrets threatening her family but also the desire she had tried so hard to suppress. As she pulled her coat tighter and started back toward town, a chill ran down her spine, a whisper of what was yet to come, and somewhere deep inside a question burned brighter than ever. How far was she willing to go to protect the fragile life she'd built? The fog clung stubbornly to the streets of Ashford as Emma hurried home, her wet boots splashing through puddles that mirrored the dim glow of the street lamps. The envelope Paul Hendricks had brandished at the riverbank gnawed at her thoughts like a persistent itch she couldn't scratch. What secrets did it hold? What skeletons were lurking just beneath the surface of her carefully constructed life? Inside the house, the warmth from the crackling fireplace did little to chase away the chill that had settled over her. Mark was still away on his business trip, leaving the house eerily quiet save for the ticking of the antique clock on the mantelpiece. Emma slipped off her damp coat, fingers trembling slightly as she poured herself a glass of wine, perhaps more for courage than relaxation. Ryan was in the kitchen, absently stirring a cup of tea. When he saw her enter, his expression was guarded but relieved. "Everything okay?" he asked, voice low. Emma shook her head, sinking into the armchair by the fire. "No, it's not okay. That man Paul, he knows too much. He has something on us." Ryan's jaw tightened, and for a moment, the easy charm he usually wore like armor was gone, replaced by a raw edge of vulnerability. "We should have told Mark," he muttered, almost to himself. Emma's eyes flashed. "And say what? That your stepmother and stepson have been dancing on a dangerous line?" "No, not yet. Not until we know what we're dealing with." She reached for her phone, fingers hovering over the screen, debating whether to open the message from Paul that had arrived minutes after they parted. The message was cryptic. "You'll hear from me soon. Brace yourselves." Emma swallowed the lump in her throat. The fragile truth she'd been clinging to was crumbling, and the coming days promised a storm far more destructive than any she'd faced before. As the night deepened, Emma found herself restless, unable to settle. She wandered to the bedroom mirror, brushing a stray lock of hair behind her ear. Her reflection stared back, eyes wide, lips pressed into a thin line. The cream silk scarf she had worn earlier now lay discarded on the dresser, the softness a stark contrast to the hardness she felt inside. Ryan appeared in the doorway, leaning casually but with an alertness that betrayed his calm demeanor. "You all right?" Emma managed a faint smile, the kind that didn't quite reach her eyes. "As all right as I can be." He stepped inside, the faint scent of rain and something more elusive clinging to him. Cologne, maybe, or just the memory of their tense encounter. For a moment they stood in silence, the weight between them heavier than words. "Whatever happens," Ryan said quietly, "we face it together. No more secrets." Emma nodded, a flicker of gratitude warming the cold knot in her chest. Together. But as the clock ticked on, and the shadows lengthened, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that the truth lurking in Paul's envelope was only the beginning. The past was catching up, and with it came a reckoning that threatened to tear apart everything she held dear. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows like a warning. Somewhere beyond the walls of her home, a secret waited to be uncovered. A secret that would change the course of their lives forever. And as Emma closed her eyes, a single thought echoed in the darkness. How long before the storm broke?